And to the coronavirus bans, I haven't talked about them for a little while. I mean, I'm still wondering about why we have so many when we've got so few cases. But here's another thing I specifically don't get, because someone wrote to me yesterday saying, look, they've had a Jewish couple wanted to go to America for their son's wedding. They took it to court to try to get out of the country in time. For religious reasons, it had to be held at a particular time. Couldn't leave the country, no matter what they said. And I have to ask, why are Australians banned from leaving their country? You're actually banned from flying out, you know. You're banned, except for emergencies and so on. It's like East Germans were banned by communists from flying to the West. We're not allowed to fly anywhere. But meanwhile, people are allowed to fly in. People, Australians, usually with dual nationality, who keep dribbling in now from places less hospitable, I guess. And boy, it turns out many of them are infected. Well, it makes you wonder what's going on in some countries, particularly India. Victoria today recorded 21 new infections overnight, the most for weeks. 21 new infections, 15 from returning travellers, mostly India. New South Wales and Queensland each reported 1 new infection. Again, both cases, people back from overseas. Now, luckily, all these people were in hospital quarantine, so it didn't pose a great risk to anyone else, except, I guess, for people trying to manage them. Now, the same story with New Zealand. It went for 24 days without 1 new infection, declared itself virus-free. All restrictions lifted. Well, today, virus-free no longer. New Zealand had let in 2 people from overseas and for some crazy reason let them out of quarantine to go to a funeral. Turns out both had the virus, 300 people to the funeral, potentially now infected too. Someone should be sacked. But now we've got our governments wanting to bring in foreign students to save our universities from going broke. South Australia, it won't even let in Victorians, but it will let in 800 foreign students next month. Canberra will take 300. Now, they're all going to have to go into quarantine, of course. But fine, you know, fine. But if that's the deal, 2 things. If that's the deal for foreigners, from now on, if you want to come into Australia, then you pay for your own 2 weeks of quarantine. No more taxpayers paying for your hotel stay. But secondly, if we can fly in foreign students, then why not give Australian citizens the same right? A right to leave and then to come back, serve time in quarantine and pay for it. Or else, are we prisoners? Joining me earlier was Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew Clennell, thank you so much for your time. Trade and Tourism Minister Simon Birmingham today said it was more likely than not that Australians won't be allowed to travel overseas until next year. That seems an unnecessary infringement on our freedom, provided, I mean, if we come back, you serve quarantine, fine, but why can't we leave?
Well, I think it's that. I think it's a strain on the quarantine facilities because everyone has to be quarantined for 14 days when they come back. And those quarantine facilities in the hotels have to be policed. That's the only thing that's demonstrated to be effective in terms of stopping the spread of the virus. And also social distancing at the airport with people coming in has been quite a problem. So as I understand it, every hour at the moment with returning citizens, there's about 150 sort of people coming in every hour to the airports. It's usually 4,000. So there's just a difficulty, I guess, in terms of the cost of quarantining travellers and so forth. Perhaps the government could look at charging those who want to go overseas with their own quarantining. That could be an option for them. But it's about the logistics, it's about the cost. So it's just easier for them to say, don't travel overseas, no doubt.
Happy to pay the cost, mate. I think you're absolutely right. Give us the freedom to pay for the cost. But I don't know if Australians are going to cop it if they see foreign students allowed to come here at our expense, by the way, quarantine, most of that. But we're not allowed to leave. I don't know if that is going to fly, that one, like many of the restrictions now.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. There'll be controversy over that. A lot of Australians probably don't want to go overseas and get the virus too, Andrew. There is that. But I think that's a real difficulty for the government. They want all the money that pours in from the foreign students. They've even been talking about having business travellers in. But as I've said, I think to you before, I don't think there's any chance of a second wave from community transmission at the moment. The second wave is going to come from overseas. So
Correct.
I only get nervous when I see stories which sort of suggest they're only going to quarantine overseas people coming in for 7 days rather than 14, that sort of thing. That's when I think, oh no, we don't need another wave of this virus, because apart from what it does on the health front, you can see what another shutdown would do, completely destroy the economy. So I just hope the federal government, when it undertakes to let foreign students back in, etc., that it is very, very careful with the quarantining and make sure that it is 14 days, because we just don't need this thing back. We're in such a fantastic position on it compared to the rest of the world.
The corruption mess, the branch stacking in Victoria. 3 ministers have resigned in disgrace. Police are investigating, and the Premier apologised to loyal, honest members who, through branch stacking, have been effectively robbed of control of their own party. Here he is.
I've got a message for all of those true believers, those genuine, hard-working local branch members who hand out how-to-vote cards, who make phone calls, who knock on doors, who debate policy. I thank you for your work and your passion. I apologise for your pain. And I guarantee you that when this reform work is finished, not only will your voice be heard, but it will be louder than it has ever been.
But Andrew Clennell, now an internal Labor report into the New South Wales branch says there's been branch stacking there as well in Western Sydney, fake members being signed up by faction bosses. What's the story there? Where's the reaction from New South Wales Labor?
Well, branch stacking in political parties, I mean, colour me surprised, Andrew, I've got to say. But, yeah, that is alleged to involve Laurie Ferguson, who's a long-time enemy of Anthony Albanese, and the suggestion is they've had or the Daily Telegraph's reported they've had a report back on that, the party, and decided not to do anything so far, to be quite slow with dealing with it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, but it highlights another issue, I think. They've gone for this extraordinary intervention Daniel Andrews has into the Victorian branch, the national intervention. Members can't vote for a pre-selection until 2023. A lot of people won't be renewing their memberships then, the legitimate members of the party, I would have thought. And it's based on these secret tapes, and Adem Somyurek, he had too much power in the party, and I think that's well established. He doesn't seem like a very nice guy. But only a year or two ago in New South Wales, we had allegations of cash coming in bags from an illegal donor who was suspected to be a Chinese spy, and yet there was no national intervention then. Anthony Albanese just ordered a review from Michael Lavarch. So there seems like a bit of an inconsistency here. Having said that, there is a feeling in the right of the party that Albanese's used both these scandals to allow him and the left of the party to have more influence in the party to the expense of the right. And the danger and concern amongst Labor people around that is that you don't win elections from the left. If the party heads even further to the left, they'll be in the wilderness for a long time indeed. So I don't see this affair ending this week at all. With these ministers being sacked or Somyurek kicked out of the party or the extraordinary intervention. I think we could see retribution down the track. One federal Labor MP said they could see an all-out factional war in Victoria. There's a lot to come in this story, Andrew.